So should the FMCSA get involved and mandate freight brokers to pay waiting time? That's the question that we're trying to answer. As truck drivers, small fleet owners, owner-operators, we're constantly battling with waiting times that sometimes do not get paid. Well, in most cases, they don't get paid. We are constantly being faced with waiting times at shippers, at receivers, customs brokers, paperwork is not ready, forklifts are broken, non-stop at shippers and the receivers. There are waiting times that go unpaid. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about 3 scenarios that happen to us as small fleet owners and truck drivers. All of you out there, I'm sure, have stumbled upon one of these 3 scenarios, if not all these scenarios. And I'll let you be the judge. And would you get FMCSA involved and mandate freight brokers to pay waiting time? All right, so here I am, Johnny the Dispatch. Everybody knows Johnny the Dispatch. So I get off the line with a freight broker. Now, me and him agreed to a truck going from Illinois to Atlanta, Georgia. The line haul rate is $2,000. I agreed to it. The broker told me you have to be there at 10 a.m. No problem, I dispatch the driver. The driver arrives to the facility at 10 a.m. Now, the driver doesn't leave the facility until 3 o'clock. There was a delay in loading him. The driver gets the shipper to sign time in, time out on the bill of lading. I get a phone call from the driver at 3 o'clock. Now the driver leaves. So what do? Automatically, I call that freight broker and I tell him, hey, my driver was at the facility for 5 hours. Can you please send me a revised confirmation for, it took 5 hours. We give 2 hours free. The 3 hours need to be billed at $85 an hour, which is very generous. Can you send me a revised paperwork for $255? An hour goes by, 2 hours go by, 3 hours go by, and I don't have my revised confirmation. So towards the end of the day, if I can remember, because I have a ton of drivers, right, I will call the broker again. This time he didn't pick up the phone. So I wait until the next day. The next day, the driver's already at the delivery. He does his delivery. Everything was fine with the delivery, but I still have $255 and I need a revised confirmation. So I call the broker again. The broker picks up the phone and says, yeah, you know what? I'm going to send you that confirmation later today. I'm just a little busy. Okay, so you leave it on your desk. Now, sometimes this confirmation on your desk can be there for 3-4 days because you haven't received the revised confirmation from the freight broker. So what do? You end up sending it. You put it manually with your hand. You write 3 hours at $85 an hour equals $255. So you tell your accounting department, please bill this, or you put an extra charge for 3 hours at $85 an hour. Accounts receivables will send an invoice to that freight broker with the line haul rate at $2,000 plus an additional $255. Now they, on their side, all of a sudden have a confirmation at $2,000, and then they have the bill coming in at $2,255. All of a sudden there's a discrepancy. What do? Click a button, freeze the payment. This invoice is not going anywhere, okay? So now their accounting department and our accounting department is going back and forth 10 times, okay? This 10 times usually goes over the course of 3, 4, 5 days, could be a week, could be 2 weeks. Our accounting department is trying to prove that there was $255 worth of waiting time. They get me involved and they consume an hour or 2 of my life now trying to prove that, this waiting time existed. At the end of the day, in most cases, okay, the broker will tell us, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. So you decide to leave it. Now, again, this is if everybody was responsive. Usually with each response and the response to that response, there's probably 3-4 days in between it, okay? So now 30 days has gone by, 45 days has gone by, the invoice needs to be paid. Well, that freight broker is not paying it because there's discrepancy in the amounts. Now accounts receivable is getting me involved because they can't get payment for this invoice. So now I'm calling for that payment and they're saying, hey, sorry, there's $255 extra. I'm like, you know what? Forget the $255, just cross it out. We'll send the revised invoice. We send the revised invoice and their payable department is now going to pay the original $2,000 instead of $2,255. This is a scenario that happens frequently, okay? So that's scenario number 1. Now let's get into scenario number 2. So scenario number 2, everybody's trying to save their ass at the expense of the truck driver. What do I mean by that? So in scenario number 2, we have Johnny the Dispatch who books a load for 10 a.m. pickup. I, as the driver, now arrive to my pickup at 10 a.m. Now I give the shipper the pickup number. The shipper goes to me, sorry, sir, that load is only going to be ready at 1 o'clock, but it says here your appointment is for 1 o'clock. Driver says, well, that's weird. Okay, let me call my dispatcher. He goes back into his truck. He calls his dispatcher. He says, hey, Johnny, listen, I'm really sorry. The pickup is for 1 o'clock. What am I supposed to do? It's 10 a.m. The dispatcher says, hold on, let me call the broker. The broker told me to be there for 10 a.m. So Johnny calls the broker. The broker says, hey, listen, yeah, you're right, the pickup is for 1 o'clock, but we're not paying for waiting time, so if you want, you can stay, or if you don't want, you can leave. We understand if your driver doesn't want to wait around. Well, the broker knows that it's extremely hard for me to find another load right now. Not only that, I drove about 60 or 70 miles to pick up this load. So the broker knows the situation and basically just, royally screwed me. Now, I, Johnny the dispatch, really have not many options here. In most cases, the company that you're working for is going to end up paying you after 2 hours. We as truck drivers really don't care if you're getting paid for this time or not getting paid for this time. After 2 hours, I'm supposed to get paid. Okay. Now, that's the way it works in our company. I don't know how it works in any other companies, but in our company, the driver gets paid whether or not we get paid or not. So Johnny calls back the driver and tells him, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to wait until 1 o'clock. Don't worry about it. After 2 hours, we'll pay you your waiting time. Broker got away with it, and we are stuck with paying the bill. So the moral of the story is, should FMCSA get involved in these kind of scenarios where the dispatcher has an email, has a confirmation, the driver arrived on time, but we didn't get paid for our waiting time? All right, so scenario number 3, you guys are gonna love this one because I'm sure a lot of you have stumbled upon this one. So here you are in North Carolina or at any location, and your dispatcher calls you. He says, hey, I got a good load for you. It pays $3 or $4 a mile, crazy paying load. You have to run 240 miles empty to pick up the load. You'll be there tomorrow morning. Sure, no problem, 240 miles for a crazy load paying $3, $4 a mile, no problem. I'll do it as an owner-operator. So driver arrives at the pickup the next day in the morning. He tries to get loaded and the shipper tells him, hey, I'm really sorry, but the load is not going to be ready until end of day today. So driver calls dispatch calls broker says, listen, I'm really sorry, they're going to load you shortly. Okay, so you start debating $3, $4 a mile. It's a pretty good load. I'll stick around. So here we are. The driver is basically doing absolutely nothing. Thought he was going to get a lot of miles done today, but apparently not. So the driver comes to the shipper again after waiting the entire day at 3 p.m. and the load is still not ready. So driver calls dispatcher calls broker says, hey, listen, I'm really sorry. Looks like that load is not going to be ready. Okay, so what do you want me to do? Well, our paperwork says that our truck order not used is $175. I'll send you $175. Johnny on the other line says, listen, I drove 240 miles empty for this load. He said, listen, sir, I'm really sorry. Our broker carrier agreement says that truck order not used is $175. Now, Johnny now has to call the driver who drove 240 miles and tell him that the load is not going to be ready and that he's getting $175. So what happens in most of these scenarios? The company ends up eating the bill for the owner-operator. Why? Because we don't want to piss off an owner-operator when it really wasn't his fault. It's not Johnny's fault, but the paperwork actually does say that the truck order not used in very, very small writing on page 37 of the 300-page encyclopedia of the freight broker, the carrier broker agreement. And it says, yes, truck order not used is $175. All right, guys. So in all 3 scenarios that I gave you, the broker will try to do everything and anything in order to not pay you your waiting time. Why? Because his customer, okay, he doesn't want to upset his customer. He doesn't want to bill his customer extra what he has to. So common brokers excuses. Number 1 is your driver was not on site. Go prove that your driver was on site or not on site. Well, you know what, sir? I have the shipper's signature with the time in and time out on my bill of lading. Obviously, the second thing they ask is, do you have your time in and time out on the bill of lading? Well, with today's technology, I really don't need time in and time out on my bill of lading. Why? Because I have satellite tracking on everything. I can tell you what time my driver arrived at the facility, what time he left the facility. I can tell you everything about the driver, okay, through the satellite tracking. Now, the next famous line is, did the shipper sign your time in, time out on the bill of lading? Meaning that if the shipper did not sign, you're not getting paid. My customer doesn't authorize waiting time. Well, what do you mean your customer doesn't authorize waiting time? Of course he authorizes waiting time, because all of us have a shipper carrier agreement or a shipper broker agreement. And in that agreement, it says waiting time after 2 hours, we bill at X amount. Okay, so I don't like these excuses. The next one I get a lot is, sometimes we get, we're sorry, sir, we're not waiting you waiting time because your driver, it took him about 45 minutes to back up into our dock. Really? So the next one, sorry, sir, you're not getting paid waiting time. Why? Because your driver didn't call in advance to let them know that he's coming to the facility. Really? How can I prove if my driver called or didn't call? Now I need to get a voice recording on my driver's cell phone number to make sure that he called to let them know in advance that I'm coming. Another famous one is, the receiver says that your driver was wandering around. He wasn't in his truck. Yeah, I love it. For sure. All right, so should FMCSA get involved? Should they be mandated? So in my honest opinion, I do not believe, as much as it pains me, as much as it hurts me, I really don't think that FMCSA should get involved. Why? Because then you really don't know where to draw the line. Because if they get involved in this, will they get involved in receivables? Will they get involved in payables? Will they get involved with driver issue with their company? Where do you draw the line? So once they step in, there's no limitations on where they're going to stop and where they're going to start. So if you cut the line and you say, no, this is not an FMCSA problem, this is a driver, broker, and business to business problem, and you guys should be sorting it out yourself. For example, I, as a carrier, have the ability to work with that freight broker in the future or not to work with that freight broker in the future. So if I choose to work with that freight broker, I know what I'm getting myself into because we have the notes on these freight brokers. So do I feel like FMCSA should get involved? No. I do believe that the driver he really shouldn't care if the freight broker is paying the invoice or not paying the invoice. The company should be dishing out the money to the owner operator or the lease operator or the company driver for waiting time. That is our responsibility. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your comments below. I'm Ronen, Ronen, and I'll catch you in my next video.